Hi, good morning, Jack Nagle. First of all, thank you very much for all the speakers because it's been really interesting. There's been a lot of discussion this morning on the Sláinte Care report. Could I just pose one question maybe to the panel? And that is, Professor, you spoke about the importance of having a common vision and objectives. And it sounds so clear and so obvious, you wonder why it hasn't happened. I would like to put that if we could have the Minister, the SecGen's management team and the HSE all align on a single vision and single objectives for the next 10 years, I think would go a long way. Is that likely to happen?
I think Jim can probably answer that question better than I can.
Well, I'm putting it to the whole panel.
Yeah, no, could I just say first of all, I mean, I think it's absolutely crucial, but it must go much further than that. I mean, there's a real danger of you know, I mean, and there's a lot of literature on this in the business literature, that strategy gets stuck in the room at the day after the presentation and nothing further happens. And it really has to be credible. So Jim has to look, for example, at his MAC, his management team, and say, are they structured in a way that can actually map in to delivery on the strategic synergies between these things? That's what's got to happen. And the whole way down the line, if it doesn't, this is the strength of the Scottish system, that they think through at every level, what is that doing, where you go back up to the shared vision at the top. And I think that's the crucial thing. But Jim, you've probably done this already.
Well, I have to keep doing it because the day I'm not aligned with my minister, I'm in big trouble. I think actually a little bit, as Francis said, going beyond it. If I look back and I think about the things that have worked in health, politicians get criticised, but actually it's when we've had political leadership to make some brave and courageous calls and stick with them. It's when we've had civil servants to support ministers in that. It's when we've had the health system aligned around that, and it's when we've had the clinical system to use their expertise and their evidence in that communication. And the examples are many. You've seen them, the cancer program and so on. All of those things got aligned in the cancer program. No one element. People talk about particular elements. The political leadership was really, really strong. There was work done on cancer policy before we had a cancer program, so the policy was clear. And then we had clinical leadership around it. So for lots of healthcare change, because it's healthcare we're talking about, you need all of those elements, and the alignment is absolutely crucial. Yeah.
I'd agree with all of that, and just one thing I'd add is that what you've described is absolutely essential. So you've got to have the direction from the top, and that has to be coherent, but it has to connect to those who deliver care. So it has to be connected out into care delivery. And that's crucial. It's got to resonate with them, and the energy will come from there then. So what you need at the top is the direction and the consistent support for that. But the care will be improved by people in Tala and Donegal and Sligo and everywhere else. And that's the real challenge. We've got to re-engage those people with this strategy.
Have we another quick question? Down here.
Hi, Kieran Brown. It was great to have the Sláinte report come out, but obviously one of the most disappointing parts of it was the immediate narrative was about how much this was going to cost. And I suppose it comes back to the fundamental thing again of we never see health as one of our national assets, as one of the means of the factors of production as important as many other parts of and it has a huge, there's huge benefits to society in investing in our health. And I suppose my question to the panel is how can we move that debate much more towards the fact that actually health is an investment rather than an expenditure?
I'll give a quick response to that. I think one of the reasons the media picked up the cost was the report was set up to present the cost first. It was not set up to discuss health. It went straight into the money thing. I was absolutely shocked. And I found myself very irritated by the time I read that. And then I went on into the report and I was much, much less irritated and much happier. But I think that was probably that notion of it's you've got to get it into public expenditure and reform. You've got to do the money thing. But I think it actually probably did influence the media debate. And I think that was unfortunate.
Yeah, and actually then the reverse is also the case. Sometimes we talk about achievement in health as 25 million for this or 50 million for that, when actually the substance is what you're trying to address. And there is a bit of that in the report where they say, we need to allocate X percent to this, or we need, and really when you look at it, what's the basis of the figure? It's just they want to prioritize this. The other aspect I would say is we tend to look, and Francis has identified it, we tend to look at this as a static thing. I've been around long enough that we spend large amounts of additional money on health. The question is, do we do it on a planned basis, or do we do it on an ad hoc basis? So whether the figures are right and whether they're affordable, we will definitely over the next 10 years, I think, spend considerable additional resources. It's a question of where we apply those resources and whether we do it in a sensible manner.
The only thing I'd add to that is that I think the health service itself and the system has to take responsibility, or some responsibility for this, because I think most people from outside the health system would look at it and think this is just a complete black hole. We don't know what's going on, and everybody is talking and saying something different. And it goes back to some of the vested interests and various other parties. But if you have a sector that is continually at war within itself and everybody in their own silo, then inevitably anybody looking at that will think, well, we cannot make sense of this. And that will drive an awful lot of the conversation. And I think an awful lot of the really positive, constructive things that happen get lost in all of that. So I think there's a challenge across the entire health system. Can we come up with some kind of coherent voice that we will agree with, and stop this carping from the sidelines to say, well, my little particular thing isn't in there, so therefore the whole thing is cast to one side. You don't get that in other sectors, you know. And you might remember, Jim, you'd have the detail on it, but there about 4 or 5 years ago when there was some of the worst of the cuts, and at a time when social protection had an overall budget of about 21 billion, they had cuts of, think of about 240 million. Whereas healthcare, with a budget of 14 billion, had cuts of about 666 million. And part of the reason for that was that I think it was much easier for social protection to make a coherent, evidence-based case for not taking the cuts. So that's a real challenge for all of us, I think.
Thank you, panel. I'm going to call this session to a close at this point in time. So I'd like to thank Francis, Jim and Leo, and ask you to join me in sharing.